Hello and welcome to the Life Lessons Podcast. Today's episode is with Steve Payne. I met Steve 2 years ago at an old job of mine. We met by serendipity, and he has been a client and a dear friend of mine since then. Steve helped develop the Transtar system here in Texas and now operates multiple businesses, including a client-focused and property development firm. Enjoy the lessons. Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and start with your origin story. Origin story meaning where do you come from? What was childhood like? How did it affect you?
Okay, all right. I am originally from, I was born in a little county called Breckenridge County in western Kentucky, 60 miles west of Louisville. It was a farming community. When I was born in 1955, there was probably about 7,000 people in the county. Today there's only 20,000, and it's a farming community primarily. Back then, it was, when I was born, it was tobacco and cattle operations. So anyway, I had 5 brothers and sisters. So there were 6 of us. We were sharecroppers when I was a small kid. Poor as we refer to it as poor as a snake. So we were sharecroppers, and that's how we subsisted for years until I was about 8 or 9 years old. Anyway, make a long story short, that's where I started. But one of the things that we did have was that we had a big family, extended family, a lot of support. I still remember the first time I realized that I was poor was the first day that I went to school. Never even thought about it. I go, something's wrong here. I was 6. Like, this ain't right. So anyway, make a long story short, I went to a rural parochial school called St. Ramos. Went to grade school and high school there. Raised on the farm, like I said, and until my father went to work for a steel mill, which was, I think I was 8 or 9 years old. We went from basically poverty to middle class in less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah, because you have income. Mm-hmm. You have, quote, real income, as opposed to wondering what you're going to get at the end of the year for that crop you have no control over. So anyway, that's the environment that I came from. So.
Wow. And did you end up going to college there?
Yeah, actually, my first year in college, I went to the University of Kentucky, and how I picked the University of Kentucky is that 2 of my best friends were going there. And they were as bad as I was. Like, all we knew is that we were going to college. So picked that. I was there for a year, and then I transferred from that college to a college, which is now a university called Brescia University now. It's a small liberal arts college, and my sister went to school there. And other friends that I went to high school, they had gone there because it was that's what they picked. Well, I just transferred from a school. I mean, let's think about it. There were 20,000 students at the University of Kentucky when I was there. I came from a rural setting where there wasn't that many people in the whole county, let alone in the school. Right. So anyway, it worked out okay. But I went to Brescia, and I'm glad I did, because it was a very small, they had like 1,000 students. It was in the 3rd largest town in Kentucky called Owensboro, which I had family that lived there. So it was really a very comfortable transition. And my interest at the time was in liberal arts education. So I just walked right into it.
What did you end up studying?
I have an undergraduate degree in sociology, which is for most people, that's not sociology. It's a study of human societies. An undergraduate degree in English literature, and an undergraduate degree in history.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How did you make your way down here?
When I graduated from Brescia, I needed to get a job. So I finally aggravated somebody to the point that said, look, I know somebody who will hire you. And I wanted to go into urban planning. Don't know why, it just seemed like a good thing to do. And it sort of fitted in with some of the work I had done in college. So I was hired by what is the equivalent of the Houston-Galveston Area Council here. It was called Green River Area Development District. It is a quasi-governmental entity that's function is to help communities develop economically. And I wound up in the transportation department simply by serendipity. Figured out real quick the transportation department always had money, everybody else was struggling. I wanted to go back to graduate school. When my head of my department, sociology, I went to speak to her about, I said, look, I need to go to graduate school. Everybody I work with has a graduate degree, so let's figure this out. You know, if I don't get one, I'm just going to be standing there waving my hands. And she goes, you want to go to Harvard? And I go, I can't get into Harvard. Well, by the way, that was the stupidest thing, one of the stupidest things I ever said. I didn't. Because I said, how am I going to get into Harvard? Well, getting into Harvard graduate school is a little different than trying to get one of the slots for undergrad, you know. Right. So basically, I just started doing some research, and I was going through the board one day, and there was a card up there that says Fellowships, Indiana University Transportation Safety Fellowships, funded by NHTSA. It was a card. I just filled it out and mailed it in, and I expected to get back some information about the program. You know, Indiana University, great university, 150 miles from where I lived, transportation, I was working in transportation, why not? Got a call a month later from the head of the department, said, hey, you want to come up here for an interview tomorrow? I go, who is this? And he explained, I said, sure. So I got my car, drove under. I had an interview with the guy. He says, all right, you're in. Have a nice day. Next thing you know, I'm at Indiana University getting a master's in transportation safety and planning. Talk about just stepping into it. Yeah. And as what Robert Frost said, and that's made all the difference. I mean, it was just, what? Mm-hmm. I mean, certainly I had to go home. So, hey, I think I just got offered to be put in Indiana University. So anyway, that's how I got started. And so went through that, sped up the program. I finished a 2-year program in 14 months. Graduate, which was a real heavy load. Not to mention I had to work while I was doing it. And because I had living expenses. And that money's only going to go so far. Well, what happened during that time? We had the second largest recession in the 1979 and 1980 was a huge recession. Not compared, it was called the Great Recession then because it was the biggest one we had ever seen until this last one in 2008. I come out all brand spanking new with a grad, and nobody's hiring. There are no jobs. And I'm standing around, now what I'm going to do? Wow. And friends of mine called up and says, hey, there's only 4 states that are hiring. It was because it was tied to the oil industry at the time. And said, we're going to Houston. You want to come? I said, I'll be there in a month. They went ahead. A month later, I loaded up everything I had in my car, drove to Houston, and started looking for a job. Because in my county alone, there was 13% unemployment. Wow. Yeah, it was, and that's how I wound up down here. Wow. Again, serendipity, right. Currents, the eddies of time and motion just drag you along. If you don't, even if you do something, you'll get drugged. But if there had not been a recession, I never would have been here. I'd been well employed somewhere in that area, and that would have been that.
Wow. Yeah. How did you feel moving down here, leaving your family?
Very apprehensive. Again, I was following a couple of really good friends of mine. We grew up in high school and college together. And they were just like me. It's like, hey, we're going to starve to death. We got to do something. And so it made the transition was easy because you've got your friend support system with you. And I always thought I'd spend 3 or 4 years down here until everything blew over. Until the economy came back and this, that, and the other, and we just traipsed on back home. It didn't work out that way. Things developed. was well employed, liked what I did. You sort of get entrenched, and next thing you know, it's 30 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
What were you into as a kid?
Oh, into as a kid, growing up in rural Kentucky, there wasn't much a lot to be into. You know, you had there was no video games and things like that, of course. Hell, I don't think there was even electronics. We had transistors. So when I was a kid. So growing up on the farm, living in a rural area, what did we do as kids? Plenty of forest as far as I can see. Did a lot of exploring, you know, hunting when I was a little older, fishing when I was a kid. And of course, my siblings, you know, there was a whole bunch of us, so we, interacted, played with each other, that type of thing. After all the work was done, of course, all the chores were done, then you'd go play. I read a lot, probably more so than the average person when I was a kid coming up, and that made a big difference, of course. Different types of adventure literature, science fiction, things along, everything that kids read when they're 9, 10, 11 years old and young adolescents. For some odd reason, when I was in high school, I got into a lot of war situational novels. I don't know why I found that interesting, but I did. But I read that.
Which of those was your favorite?
Well, I don't remember the books per se. I just remember the subject matter. I read a lot of things. Of course, back then the Vietnam War was going on. There was a lot of literature written about that. My father was in the Korean War. My uncles were in the World War II. So reading a lot of World War II stuff was very interesting. Yeah, I don't recall the books or the novels, but yeah, that was the subject matter.
Wow. How were you in high school?
Oh, I was fine. I went to, like I said, small Catholic high school. I had 23 people in my graduating class. There was 125 in the whole school. I was trained by Ursuline nuns. I played basketball for a couple of years. I worked at a local grocery store when I was from 15 on. All my friends were pretty much like me, so where I was from, the most important thing in one's life is turning 16, getting their driver's license, and then scratching up money to get their first car. Because that's all there was. That's all cruising. That's all there was. But, I mean, the whole town that our farm was like 3 miles away from the county seat. The county seat had 1,300 people in it. That was the biggest town in the whole county.
Wow.
And this county's about the size of Harris. So that ought to tell you something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Said you got into transportation down here. Transportation
planning, engineering, yeah. Basically, that was driven by two things. Number one, I had worked, I got out of college. I went to work for the Green River Development District that we talked about. I was in a transportation department. I was doing transportation studies and basically what everybody else, collecting data, things of that nature, doing analysis, very, very minor analysis. And then I got that fellowship for the safety and the planning degree from Indiana University. So I'm a fully minute transportation planner. So I run down here and start looking for jobs. And I actually wound up working for the Metropolitan and Transit Authority, Metro.
Okay.
I was 20. I went to work for them. I had just turned 25, 26, 25, I think. Yeah. So, yeah. Went in, didn't know squat. Next thing you know, I'm from a town of 1,300 people and I'm working downtown Houston.
Wow.
Yeah, that was cool.
How long did you do that?
I worked for them for about 6.5, 7 years. Started out as a planner, wound up as a project manager in what's called Intelligent Transportation Systems. You're familiar with Transtar?
Yes.
Okay, well, I helped design those things. I started out before those things existed. And I grew up in the industry and I wound up running the program for Metro. At 27, I had a $30 million budget, program budget.
Wow.
Oh no, it wasn't why. It was because they couldn't get anybody else to do it. And they thought it was so insignificant. We had so much money back then, we didn't know what to do with ourselves. They thought it was so insignificant and unimportant. Someone like me could deal with it. And I said, okay. Next thing, well, that was a real eye opener. You know, I was in charge of planning, design, implementation, and operations of an entire system, which you typically don't get that. You hand it off. And the reason it was done that way is because nobody else wanted it. Everybody wanted to focus on the rail system, which eventually went to hell in a handbasket, and that was the only game in town. I and my boss were the two most popular human beings in the authority once the rail referendum fell, because everybody wanted to work for us because all the rail planners and designers, they were losing their jobs. There was nothing to do. I mean, what's your specialty? I design railroads. Well, we're not doing one. Have a nice day. So anyway, yeah.
After Metro, what did you end up doing?
I went to work for the Texas Transportation Institute, which is a research affiliate of A&M University, and I was a research scientist for them, operating here in the Houston area. I worked for them for about 3 years. I worked for them about 1.5 years, and then I was transferred to Dallas to manage their what was called the North. There was a great big construction project up there called North Central Freeway expansion, and TTI, the Research Institute, had been hired to look at operational issues and come up with processes by which you could speed traffic through during construction. Technology was back then. You know, how do you take technology, camera systems, monitoring, things like that, and help keep this thing moving while it's all being dug up? Well, I ran that project office for 1.5 years, and at that time, I had also went back to school, was getting another master's in business. So here I was running this office. We had like 4 people. I was going to school part-time, working full-time, and you finally get to the situation is I'm doing this full-time job mediocre. I'm doing my graduate work mediocre because there's only so much time in the day. And if you're mediocre at your job, they fire you. And if you're mediocre in graduate school, they put you out. So I had to make a decision. So I decided I resigned from the Institute and went back to school full-time. And it was going to take me 2.5 years more as a part-time. So I finished it up in a year because I was full-time. Yeah.
Okay. Then after getting your master's in business, what did you end up doing from there?
Well, it's interesting. I got recruited right out of, you have these great expectations. Now, remember, I'm in my early, mid-30s now. I'm a little different than when you're 24, 25 years old. When I came out with my first master's, I was 24 years old. Well, that's pretty much the standard. What do you know? Oh, nothing. That's what you know. Because you have no experience. Well, I had more than most because I had worked 1.5 years for the planning organization. So I'm coming out. I got recruited immediately out of the box by a brokerage company, and it was pretty interesting. I did that for about 1 year and realized I was going to starve to death. If you're going to do a business, brokerage is really interesting. But it's sales is what it is. See, I was doing all the time. It's sales. And I have a personality that sort of goes that route, anyway. You just have to be able to talk and present and pay attention, things of that nature, and be a little focused. But the way this was set up, now if you can last 3 years, you can make it, you build up your clients and this, that, and the other, and because you're doing a lot of commission work, blah, blah, blah. And but you're going to starve for 3 years. And I was undercapitalized, and I got to the point where I got tired of being, because I was used to having money. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I'm going to starve. Hey man, I got to eat, that type of thing. And I had a whole lot more options because of my background, people I knew. And I said, look, I can't do this anymore. And next thing you know, I'm hired back into the transportation industry. You just bang, let's go. Yeah, I'm glad you're back. Glad to see you.
Now, is this still all down here in Houston?
I did my master's program in Dallas, okay, at University of Texas in Arlington, and then I moved back lived there for 3 years, ran the office, went to school, lived there for 3 years, and then in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Then I moved back to Houston, yes.
Okay.
Because I had a lot of friends here. I had a lot of friends up there, but a lot of friends, yeah, I had history down here. And,
Right.
I wasn't beholden to anybody, so it didn't make any difference. So I just, let's go back to Houston. That makes sense.
What did you think about life then? Or how did you think about life?
In what regard?
Just in general, what did you want to get out of life?
Basically, I have an entirely different view of it now than I did then because I was only 30 years old. I had no experience. Of course, life was all wrapped up in just some real minor things. Number one, having a good career because you could accumulate wealth, and having a good cadre of friends that you could your social life, dinner parties, museums, plays, that type of thing. And that was pretty much the focus of it, accumulating wealth, being social.
Do you think that having a career now is a good way to accumulate wealth, or do you think there's different ways?
Well, that's interesting. I look at it entirely differently now, and that is accumulating wealth beyond a certain point, that which I need to live well, is of no interest to me. Because it used to be, whenever I make my first million, by the way, which I still haven't, but God knows I've spent more. I've spent 2 or 3 million, but that's another issue. That does not appeal to me anymore. I mean, it's not in my focus. Yes, having a good way of making income in order to provide enough wealth in order to sustain me and my family and achieve certain things that I want to do, like security, that type of stuff, some personal things. That's the focus. It's not accumulating wealth. No, I don't want to be Steve Jobs anymore. Thought it did, like everybody did back then. That's why everybody got an MBA. We're all going to be Steve Jobs.
Right.
Yeah. And then I die early of cancer. So, but that's another issue.
Right.
Go ahead. I got a job as the program manager for long-range planning for the Houston Galveston Area Council. So I went right back into transportation. I was running the program. Our job was to put together the 30-year long-range plan and all the components of that for the entire metropolitan region.
Wow.
Yeah. First plan I put out, it was a total of $9 billion. This is all the things, in order to get from point A to point B, which has been defined by all the people in the transportation, you're holding public meetings, where do you want to go? The economic development, cultural, all that. You have to have a plan. And one of the key components of any society being successful and growing, and if you're not growing, you are actually dying, is one of the basic tenets is you have to have a transportation system that supports that. And that's a big deal. I mean, transportation is 20-25% of the entire economy, because you can't get anything done if you can't get from point A to point B, if you can't move stuff.
Right.
So my job was to bring all the agencies together, the transits, the highway department, the cities, the counties, the federal highway guys, and say, okay, with their guidance and game. I mean, I didn't think this up on my own. There's guidelines. I just took somebody else's job. This is what you have to do to get from point A to point B. You bring it all together and say, okay, how much transportation do we need to achieve this type of economic development and this degree of a livable society or city, however you want to describe it, over the next 30 years. And then you build a plan. And this is what you do in the first 3 years. This is what you do in the first 5, first 10, first 20. And then you have to total it all up. What's this going to cost? It's going to cost a minimum $9 billion, which, by the way, turned out to be wrong. It was a whole lot bigger. But that was 30 years ago. I mean, you don't know what you're looking at. Right. If you assume a growth rate of 2.5–3%, which is a pretty standard growth rate, I mean, this is what you are now, then you can do a fairly decent projection. And remember, it's only a plan. It's not an engineering drawing. This thing changes. That's why you review it every 2-3 years to see what's changed. what economically has changed, what's changed in your population, what's changed politically, what has changed in the individuals who live in your metropolitan area, what they want, what education has changed. And you work it all together and says, okay, all those elements have an effect on the transportation system that you need to provide, and then you adjust it accordingly. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting.
How long did it take you to propose that plan or bring that plan together?
It took us a year and a half to put that plan together. Now remember, there had been 5 years earlier had been one. You basically work off of that with new parameters and stuff like. But it took a staff of myself, I think it's 6 or 8 guys. It took us at least a year and a half to put it together, and go through all the reviews, and submit it, and then by the time we got finished with that, 2 years, and then we got 3 years to get ready for the next one. So you just like 5 years you have to update it. So it's a huge effort. I was also responsible for the integrating air quality into that plan. So we had a group that did nothing but air quality analysis. Well, my transportation plan had to take into account all that, and how am I going to plan this in order to meet the air quality requirements the federal government had set. By the way, you guys, this city could produce X amount of ozone, X amount of bad gases. All right, that needs to be reduced. Show me how this plan is going to reduce this. And you have these huge models that I'm doing this, we pump it into the model, it shows you what it increases or decreases. And oh, by the way, if you do not have a plan that is compliant, in other words, I've set the standard for you. If this plan does not get that pollution level down to X, guess what? All that federal transportation funds that we give you in the billions of dollars, you don't get it anymore. Like, holy moly. I mean, that'll make your eyes open up. It's like, huh? Yeah, we're going to cut you off. And most states thought that was just the federal government being, you need to do something. I mean, look how things were back. I mean, you've never experienced it. Just ridiculous. Who was it? Oh, it was Atlanta. I remember that. They basically, well, the feds will never do that. They're talking a mean game, but they're and Atlanta called them out, and they said, watch this. Boy, they cut their funds off. They stood around, looked around, and says, now the rest of you guys, we just mashed Atlanta. Think we're kidding now? Oh, no, sir. and you basically, you can get it done if you have the will. Yeah, that's all. And they gave us the will by saying, we're cutting your money off. By the way, we're going to cut off Atlanta for at least 2 years and watch those guys flop around like fish. And that got everybody's attention nationwide. And we all got in gear and did our jobs.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you when this was going on?
Running that program, I think I took over when I was 35. No, I took over when I was 35. Or 30. No, I took over when I was 37. And ran it up till I was 40. And then I went to work for an engineering firm shortly after that. I went to the private side of the industry as opposed to the public government side of the industry, or what we used to affectionately refer to as the dark side. But let me make a point about a couple things. I don't know how it is in the world that you work in, but where I work in, so there's the public and the private. Let's face a few facts. If you design roads and you build roads and you build transportation systems, where do you get your money? I don't care if you are a private firm. What contract? Where do you get your contracts from? You get them from governmental entities. That's all you get them from, because that's what you do. You supply infrastructure. Well, who buys infrastructure? Society buys infrastructure. So, okay, great. And it used to be this whole argument, we'll privatize everything and makes it more efficient, profit motive. Yeah, that is important. But I will tell you this. I never worked as hard working for a private company, which I'm 20-some years now, than I worked for that 15 years that I worked for the governmental organizations. You got run because you had X and you had to get it done. Right. And so there was I was as motivated on the public side as I ever was on the private side. I mean, and motivation is, what is it? You want to get it done, you want to do your job, you want to be successful, you want to have a sense of satisfaction, this, that, and the other. That doesn't make a difference whether you work public or private. I used to argue with my friends about that all the time that never worked on the public side. And they would make references to well, what's it like to have a real job now? Let's see. Oh, yeah. I'll never give you a contract. That's what it's like. How's that?
At what point in your career were you at your peak? So, meaning, what was your big break?
Never had a break.
Never had a break.
You know, when you gave me a little idea about some of the questions, I got thinking about that, and that's a real important question. I never had, quote, a big break, and most people never do. But what I had was a series of opportunities to go to college. When I came out of college, I was pursuing. They happened to have one slot open for this type of work, and I happened to get it. What else? Sending a postcard. I wound up in graduate school at Indiana University. Stuff like that. On and on and on. It's just a series of opportunities that showed up. And the thing that you learn, the things that you want to learn, is that when you see an opportunity, have the ability to evaluate it and decide whether you're going to take it or not. But as far as for myself personally, I've had no, quote, big breaks. You know, I mean, but I've had a whole series of small or meaningful opportunities. And you can call those breaks. You know, I've had things like, for example, hey, I know a guy that needs this type of service. Call him up and says, hey, you're just the guy we're looking for. If you think about that, that's a break.
Right.
That's a break. Yeah, yeah.
Do you believe that life, you go with life and it kind of, the cliche saying of, it happens for a reason? Do you believe that aspect of life, or do you believe in building your own life?
Yeah, that's a good question. Things happen for two reasons, or two conditions. One is you create the opportunity. For example, if you want to build things, in other words, construction or design or whatever, you need to have engineering knowledge. Well, you create that knowledge by going to school. That's you. You had a desire, and you looked at this, I have a desire to do this. What do I have to do now in order to achieve this desire or promote this desire? Well, I got to do this, this, and this. Well, that's you creating your own circumstance, what it is. You're preparing yourself. That's what it is. That's what Abraham Lincoln used to talk about all the time when he was a young man, educating himself to this, that I will continue to prepare myself personally until I have an opportunity to use it. Okay, that's it. The second thing there is such a thing, and it's like we talked about earlier, eddies and currents. Aristotle referred to it as the blessings of good fortune. This thing about being in the right place at the right time, yeah, that's good fortune. That's serendipity. That's things. It doesn't mean if you're not prepared educationally, professionally, personally to take advantage of something that comes up unstructured opportunity just shows up at your door, and well, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'd like to do that because you have all these skills. But the blessings of good fortunes, I think, is something that's terribly underrated. Because let's take an example. I think you and I talked about this before. I don't care what genius you are. You can have a high IQ of 186, which would put you right way in the top of that range. And you're born in the backwaters of, let's pick a nice place I'm not trying to disparage the country or anything, an undeveloped country or community, let's say in the Himalaya mountains. Your opportunities are limited. I don't care how brilliant you are, because your misfortune, if you want to look at it that way, is that you were born in the Himalayas, or you were born somewhere in Bangladesh 40 years ago. That is a misfortune as far as achieving these, personal development. So you're prepared, and then when the opportunities or situations arise, you have the intelligence to evaluate them, and you move on. Now, fate, there is no such thing as fate. You make your own. You make your own, or you just continue to live as things come to you. But you're not fated. Or what's the old? Oh yeah, it is written. No, there's nothing about a human's life that is written.
Interesting. So, you said you moved down here because you were kind of following your friends.
Yeah, they were unemployed too. They were well educated, unemployed, and they were like us. We were going to stand there together in this small community, and never have it, wait 2 years for something to crack. And they just packed up food, and I said, I'll be down there. And I just followed them.
You still have a close relationship with them today?
One is deceased, and the other one lives 4 blocks from my house.
Wow.
I mean, these are guys I grew up with when I was in high school. I mean, and went to college with. I mean, I know all their parents. Their parents knew me. I mean, you grow up in a rural community, and everybody knows everybody.
Right.
You know them all. You know all their brothers and sisters. You know all their warts. They're just a big part of an extended family is what they are.
Right. Moving down here, did you ever get, quote unquote, backstabbed by anybody?
Oh, I mean, everybody's going to have that. Sure, you're going to have that. But those are very few and far between, unless you're just hanging out with the wrong group of human beings. But, yeah, and that's basically, and that's primarily in the business environment, yeah. But again, that's few and far between, because once that's done, you remove yourself from that situation, or you remove them, whichever you have the power to do, and then you just go on. Yeah, everybody's going to experience that. It's just how you respond and adjust to it that will make the difference. If you're going to get owed and bitter about it, like I am. It's you just take it for what it is, learn what you can, and depending on your personality, you're either going to revenge is your cup of tea. I guess you'll engage in a little of that, and if dismissing it for the worthlessness that it is, that's what you'll do. I personally had a combination of the two, but that's how my personality is.
What criteria or what specifications would you need to call someone a friend, like a real friend?
Well, that's really interesting. Real friends, they're how many quote real friends? I have a lot of acquaintances,
right? And
I have a lot of good acquaintances. Friends, there's 5 or 6 of those. And friends, that's a really interesting question. I wish I had thought about it a little more, but I think the definition for me is that, friendships are considered one of the Western philosophical thought. Friendship is considered a necessary good. You need to have friendships. It's in our nature to have friendships because we're social animals.
Right.
But friendships are different than families. I'm very close to all my family members. I was born with them. I mean, when they say you have to, you're born in your family, you get to pick your friends.
Right.
So you have different criteria. You have similar interests, similar values. They may change over the years. Some have. But these are individuals that you can always go to and say, okay, here's the deal. You help them. You're concerned. You're legitimately concerned about their welfare, and you'll go more than out of your way to, yes, I understand. I'll help you. This is what we'll do. Sure. And that's and there's I got about probably 4, maybe 5 that hit that criteria. And besides that, if it's more than that. They're good acquaintances. They're good whatever. But if you're talking about true, genuine friendships, you get past the 5 mark, you better consider yourself extremely fortunate. And if you're not deluding yourself, I have guys that call everybody their friends.
Right.
No, they're acquaintances that you happen at this moment get along with, and they're perfectly sociable human beings. And I call them friends too, but they're social friends. They're good acquaintances. Good acquaintances.
You think the term friends applies to business, or do you think it's strictly?
Oh yeah, I mean, business. Is what I have learned is that you don't divorce yourself from the two. I mean, you have business relationships. I think where we're getting confused with that is, I have some really good acquaintances / friends in business that I would help out in business any way I could and do, and vice versa. But that's a separate category than friends that are your extensions of who you are.
Right.
Yeah, you need to develop those. We refer to them in business as relationships or good relationships. Yeah, you need those. Now, where the dividing line is, or this, that, and the other, I'll give you an example. I have a guy that I consider a very good acquaintance and a friend, and not this, but a friend. And we do a lot of business together. There are rules here. And we're supportive of each other. We can help this right up to the point where that rule is going to be, I'll put you this way. I don't care how good of a business partner you've been. You steal from me. You can't do that.
Right.
I mean, you can have, and I actually have had business partners that have done that. And in a moment of weakness and desperation on their own part, well, okay, but unlike my family, which they never would, maybe the other way around. They're all more successful than I am if you use the monetary measurement. If one of my family members were to steal from me, they're still my family member, and I still love them. I will be more cautious. But if you're my business partner, i.e. my business friend, you steal from me, that's terminated because you cannot function that way. That's all. And you just can't function that way.
What was your biggest failure in life, or your best failure?
Well, when I saw that question, I want you to explain to me what you mean by best failure.
By best failure, I mean the failure that really, you ended up being so embarrassed, so at the bottom, that it ended up changing your life for the better.
I've never had one of those. No, I've had numerous setbacks, failures, or whatever, monetarily, personally, things of that nature. We all do. Right. But I've never had one where there was some type of crystallization or defining epiphany on something. Monetarily, I suppose. But see, I was laboring with that question, and that's a really good thing. And then I got thinking about it. I'm 60. I'll be 64 this month. So my thinking of how things are is much different than when I was your age or in my early 30s or early 40s. I don't have failures. I have setbacks. And see, if you define a failure as something that, like you said, which was that you're so embarrassed and this, that, and the other, you just, I've had acquaintances, and actually I had one good friend who had such a tremendous failure in his mind that he disappeared. And for 25 years, I cannot find him.
Wow.
Just can't find him. And I'm fairly certain he's dead. But he had a series of personal setbacks and this, that, and the other, and so on and so forth, that at the time were tremendous for him, and they were tremendous. That he just stopped socializing with all his, because he was too embarrassed. I'm sure that's what the case was. And the last time I saw him was 23 years ago. He was at my wedding. And never spoke to him since. He flew in, and I hadn't seen him. I'd spoken and this, that, and the other. but I knew that something was terribly wrong with him. Then after I got married, got things settled, I reached out to John, and I couldn't find him. He disappeared. And to this day, we can't find him. And one of these days, there's 2 or 3 of us that are good friends that he was in that group was college, and we've talked about, well, let's go find him. That's not that hard. You can hire a couple of guys. Let's go find him and find out whether he's alive or dead or what, and see. I don't know. He just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Did he end up moving down here with you guys, or did he?
No. He was from Memphis. He lived in Memphis. His whole family was there, and he had a big family, and he had a real interesting and partially tragic life, which I thought he dealt with spectacularly. I don't think I would have done as well as he did, but something caught up with him. Something later on down in his early mid-30s, something happened, and I don't know what that was. That made his life, he changed, and he became more recluse, more distant, that type of thing, till finally he just ceased to exist. But I've never had anything like that. Never had anything. That's what I call a real personal failure. I've had a lot of setbacks, and in my early age, or when I was younger, I would call them failures. But now looking back on it, now it could be one or two things. I like to repackage. Maybe I'm just repackaging something so I can think about it more pleasantly. Redefine reality. That could be part of it. Or I could actually have come to some real knowledge in saying, okay, let me tell you, let's define what a failure is. And I don't look at things as failure. Well, you remember that hardware little thing I started where we met?
Right.
As far as financially and business-wise, that's been the biggest stinking failure of my entire, and you talk about a mess. I'm still trying to climb out from under that. But I refuse to, what have I done? Well, I won't be doing it this way anymore, and I'm doing this. I met you. This was a good thing that came out of it. One of the most positive things. I met a couple of guys. One guy in particular has been helping me a whole lot. He's great. Now, you need to interview him. He's got a real interesting life compared to me. It's like, oh, wow, man. But we become good acquaintances, and I would call him a friend, bordering on it. But I get real that there's a demarcation. But he's a great guy. And I never would have bumped into him hadn't been for this, and I've got to watch him for 2 years struggle unbelievably in his own business and work and this and that. And I'm sitting there going, man, I think I would have shot myself, which is not true, but just his perseverance to keep up with what his life took that turn in. I mean, he's been handed a whole lot of what is it? I'll put you this way: the blessings of good fortune. He hasn't been blessed with much of it lately. But his ability to adapt, adjust, and not give up, and this, that, and the other is a real inspiration, and it has been to me. Well, I got that out of it. Now I just have to figure out how to dump that $600,000 worth of nuts and bolts and get my money back. I'm still working on that part, and you're going to help me do that, or I'm going to make you pick up the tab. So. That would be, I would consider that my biggest financial screw up, for lack of a better term, because that's tens of thousands of dollars that I'm still, having to figure out how to get out from under. But man, what a set of problems. And now I've had all this, and I go, well, I can do this, I can do that. I met these people, blah, blah, blah. And if you look at it from that standpoint, they're setbacks. They're not failures when it just finally you just quit and say, I don't mean quit because cutting your losses and go, look, this is not going to work. I don't care how hard I work. That is not quitting. That is called cutting your losses. That's called an intelligent decision. Sometimes you just have to do that. A failure is something that just really goes to hell in a handbasket and takes you with it, takes you personally with it. It changes the way you think, the way you act. the way you interact with other individuals. It diminishes you. It makes you angry. It gnaws at what you are, and reshapes what you are for the worse. Now that's a failure. I don't have those. I've had failures, quote unquote. That I used to think that way, but now that I'm looking back around, oh, that's a failure. Whoopee, I wish I had 2 or 3 more of those. That was nothing. I was just a young kid, thought that my world was coming to an end because I didn't know any better. That's all. That's all. There is one big advantage about getting to know you, and I talked about that. I, unlike you, actually do know what I'm doing. Right. and as I tell my sons, my 17-year-old son, you will learn more, and I won't even use the word failure because it has such a connotation in English language. You start structuring, how you interpret things will affect how you act or respond to them. I never use the word failure. My 2 sons have had a series of setbacks in their high school career. Like, I want you to explain to me this grade. It says F. Yes, I know what F stands for. This is a setback because you're not getting out of this. You're going to figure out a way. But that's a setback, High school, I don't care what happens to you in high school. That's a setback. It is not a failure. Good God. But boy, I was the most important thing in the world to me when I was in high school. College the same way. But it's like I tell my son, I said, you will learn more from your setbacks than you ever will learn from your successes for this particular reason. Particularly, you do something initially and then you're successful at it, you got lucky. I got news for you. You just got lucky. You just don't know it. But when you have a setback, okay, what got me here? What do I do? This, that, and you take that and you incorporate it into your next activity, and then those errors that you made that brought that setback to you are eliminated because you know what to do now. That's how you look at setbacks. First thing you do, you quit calling them failures. They're setbacks. You just misinterpreted the world. That's all you did. That's all you did. You just didn't have enough data, and you didn't process the data properly. But by the way, you got plenty of data. You just don't process it right because that is a training exercise, and that's what old age gives you. You have all these experiences. Oh, I'm not doing that again. Well, I did that once. Woo! No. Let me show you what's going to happen to you when you go down that road. This is where you're going to get the bullet in your head. Okay? If you want to kill, go ahead. But I told you. And don't come back to this house going, well, Dad, nope, we had that chat. You wanted to do it anyway. So, anyway, yeah.
Do you have a special ritual, prayer, affirmation you do every day?
No, I don't do that. And other than, I do have one ritual. I will have a cup of coffee. Don't talk to me, don't look at me, and don't ask me a question. That's why I get up so early. I have all this coffee in me by 5 o'clock, and everybody else is going to be a victim of me. I need an answer. No, I don't. I just, like I said, I get a cup of coffee and I sit down and think about, okay, what am I going to do today? What do I need? What do I need to do today, or try to plan out the day, and this, that, and the other. So, but I don't have I don't walk around the block 3 times. But I tell you what, one good ritual I need to get back into is exercising. I need to get up, get my 4 miles in, and then get on to work. Now that would be a good ritual. I used to do that. I need to get back to that.
Measure your success according to your own measure.
Right.
Do you think that you're where you are today, or you've accomplished what you've accomplished today because of a higher meaning, or strictly because of all the hard work you put in throughout your life?
Yeah, when you say higher being, are you talking about some higher power influence or something like that, or religious or whatever?
Right.
No, and I'll tell you what, and I don't mean that in a, which has no reflection on my spiritual life or whatever it is. My father used to say, this is religion's a great thing. My father was a very, very good man, very devout in his religion. raised Roman Catholic, this, that, and the other. But my father had one quality in that regard, and that was, this is something that you keep to yourself, and you just do it. Declaring that you've been saved, just get out of here, guys. Either walk the walk and be quiet. You walk the walk. You don't even talk about it. You're a living example. That's what you are, and you just go on. So no, in my case, it's not any type of spiritual application. That is an entirely separate thing over here. I mean, but first of all, redefining what success means. That was probably, no, there's no probably to it. That has resulted in what I am, who I am, that type of thing, or how I feel about myself, or whatever, more so than anything else. Because you had a question, we talked about the definition of happiness. There's two types of there's two definitions of it. One of it, which we typically use, which is called, are you happy? That is the question is, at the moment, are you content? That's a psychological happiness. But in Western philosophical thought, developed by the Greeks, happiness means this. Happiness is a life well lived. It is a whole life that is made moral, not religious moral, but behavioral moral. It's made moral by virtue, and virtue is the habit of right choices. That's all virtue means, and there's four cardinal virtues, and they're habits on how you choose to try to achieve a good life. And then the last phrase of that happiness is blessed with good fortune. Again, if you're born in the backwaters of Bangladesh, and your chance of fulfilling all the potential that you have as a human being is horribly diminished because you don't have the resources to do it. You don't have the resources to do it. Now, when you take a look at what that means and apply it that way, then there's that change or that revelation or whatever. It's man's end. It's a meaning of what life is, what a good life is, or what your moral obligation is. Again, moral in the sense of human behavior. It's got nothing to do with religion. Do you know what morality means? Look it up in the dictionary, what morality means. That which pertains to right and wrong as it relates to human behavior.
Right.
Now, we have two types of morals.
Right.
We get confused, and that's one set, which has got everything to do with what a human being is and our nature as a human being. This is how a human being acts. By nature of its DNA, by nature of its, I'll give you an example. Any animal acts in a certain way because of instinct or whatever, because it's in its nature. We do too, but we have the ability to modify it because we have intellect. Okay, and then you have the what's referred to as religious morals, or and doesn't mean that they don't sometimes they don't have some relationship, but that's different. That's just simply different. So when I talk about moral, I talk about this moral because this is over in the realm of religiosity, which is not anything I have absolutely any interest in exploring or discussing, because you can never come to a reasonable end on it, because it's a belief, as opposed to this is these are matters of truth and actuality and facts. And if you can deal with that, so you can get something done. Over here, it's like a matter of taste, You love green, I love blue. That's fine. Why are we going to argue about which is a better color? That's silly. We're not. But anyway, make a long story short, the answer is no, but that's the definition of happiness. And the great thing about that definition, which by the way is the the absolute kernel of all Western philosophical thought. I mean, you're going back to the origin. There's 4 words that are the origin of Western philosophical thought. The good is desirable. That is the origin of Western, that is the kernel, that is the, for lack of a better term, that is the moment of the Big Bang, in Western philosophical thought. And everything traces right back to that. But, but the great thing about the pursuit of happiness is there's no terminal point. You cannot be described. You're always doing that. You're always becoming that. And you can't even sit and say, did he live a good life, until you don't exist anymore. It's up to somebody, because once you don't exist anymore, then you can say, well, did he lead a good life? Did he have a good life? Because I'm still having my life. I'm still having my life. And that's the great part about it is that once you come to grips with that, there is no end. There's all these things that you as a human being, in other words, the pursuit of happiness in those degrees and what those things are, there's certain components of it, and this is not going to turn into a big philosophical discussion, but it took me 10 years to decipher that. 10 years of reading, study, this, that, and the other, and testing, and I haven't achieved it, which is nothing more than what Aristotle did on a breezy day in Greece. Well, let me explain to you how this works. What is man's end? Man's end is the pursuit of happiness, which has no terminal end until they cease to exist. My father once said something to me that my father was revered in the community that we came from, not because of his wealth and this, that, and the other, because of what a good human being he was, and he was excellent in that regard. And my father once told me, he says, at the end of the day, which was his definition, when somebody kills you, Steve. No, at the end of the day, you don't exist anymore. He says, all you take with you is your good name. So that's it. Once you betray your good name, in other words, once you give that up, and all those things that we know that you should not engage in, that harms other people, and doesn't achieve, and you don't focus on trying to achieve your potentiality and so on and so forth. That is all part of your, in other words, your character, and your character defined in the end is your good name. And so that's all you take with you. So you better get this straight. So his entire life was focused on, and of course he didn't come to this revelation until he was in his 50s and 60s. He had a good start in this, that, and the other, but at the end of the day, he realized that's what he tried to do, is I try to do with my sons, is that if you understand that, because we know that physiology, we know that the human brain is still developing when you're in your early 20s. Or as I refer to my eldest son, your brain is as smooth as a cue ball right now. You need to get some ridges in it, And he goes, what? I said, exactly. So now your brain's developed, you've had a martyrdom of personal experiences, that and the other, and now you direct yourself to understanding and incorporating the universal truths that Western philosophy can bring to you in order to achieve as much of your human potential as possible. In other words, to pursue happiness and to live a good whole life that we will all evaluate after you're dead. But you just keep moving. That's all.
What is the biggest lesson life has taught you?
Well, I've been taught a whole lot of lessons by some big guys right outside the bar. That was a big one. As my father would say, don't screw with people you don't know, because you don't know what they're capable of doing. That's a big lesson. You need to learn that before you're out in the parking lot discussing it. That just doesn't work. Big lesson. Life is such a series of lessons. But if I have to wrap it up in a nutshell, and that's what you're asking, rightfully so, is I think one of the most significant ones is when I realized that what I do to earn my daily bread doesn't define who and what I am as a human being. I don't care what an individual does to earn their daily bread, as long as it's honorable work, obviously. If you're a dope dealer, I'm going to have a chat with you about it. But that's not who you are as a human being. That's not what you are. I mean, and most of us do that. We get into that trap. I mean, somebody says, you go to a party. You're going to love this, particularly when you go to a party. And the question is, it's always, well, what do you do for a living? In other words, I try very hard never to ask that question anymore. Either I know what they do for a living, we just talk about something else, or if there's somebody just totally blank, my question is something along the lines, what do you dedicate most of your time to? What is it that you're into? Something that's not, because, and particularly in the engineering world, what I grew up in, or worked in, is that the other, what they would say is, I'm an engineer. Okay, that's who they were as a human being. You know, you're not. That's what you do to earn your daily bread, in other words, to make a living. You're not an engineer. That is a talent or something that you do in order to, what you are as a human being is what you're trying to, and work doesn't define you as a human being. Shouldn't. And when I finally come to grips with that, that was really liberating, because I can always earn money. Right. You and I have talked about that many a time. You know, well, how much money? $1,000? Okay, I think I can get that by the end of the week. I mean, there's always, but that doesn't define who I am and what I am as a human being. And once you give that up, then your focus changes tremendously. Professions are really bad about that. I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm a lawyer, I'm a college professor. So that's how you earn your money. What are you? Who are you? Right. Now, that's different. I didn't ask how you earn your daily bread. I asked what you are as a human, how you define yourself as a human being. That's different. It's different.
Wow. Where do you go from here?
Actually, here I go back. No, and that's another thing. It's interesting. I went off on this tangent. I have my own firms now, which, by the way, like you and I have talked about, $300 and a good attorney, you have all the companies you want. I got to get my kids through college, which would probably be done with a boot more than money. I'm working on I got 2 or 3 companies that are going, trying, some generating money and some are just sitting there. I'm working on, what do I want to do? I want to go back to school and get another master's in applied economics. I'm working on that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to Lone Star doing the math to get my math skills back up, because I haven't used them in a long time, but I'll go into that program. That's a 2-year program. Yeah, that'll be easy. Not easy, but that's I'll probably start that in about 1.5 years, 2 years. I want to do that for my own personal whatever. There's a whole lot of subject matter reading that I'm pursuing, that I want to do. That's leisure work. That's that's not self-development. That's a terrible word. It sounds like I'm building something. I don't like self-development. It's achieving my potential. One of the things I want to do, and it's going to take 20 years, is that I want to be able to understand the basic math formula, so that when somebody puts up the equation, which they should have finalized next 5 years, physics says, okay, this is the equation that combines all the forces of the universe. Now, the math in that is astronomical, way beyond my skill level. I want over the next 20 years to have enough math, knowledge, training, whatever, so when I see that formula, which only has about 6-8 symbols in it, that I will go, yes, I know what that means mathematically. I know what it means conceptually. I mean, I understand that now, electromagnetism, all that stuff. But I can't do the math. I can't appreciate the math. That's an entirely different language. It'll take about 20 years. If I really stay on it, I think I can do it in 20 years. And that's pretty cool. That's a good goal. I got nothing better to do. One of the things that I want to do is I've talked to some friends about it. We're organizing right now. I want to go back to the county that I grew up in and start a university. That'll take about 20 years. I'll get it all said and done. I mean, we've been working on it the last 2 years, conceptually putting together how we do this, how we do that, who you get involved, basically building the structure. That's one of the reasons why I want to go back and get my master's in applied economics. Not that I cannot do the economic analysis now, because I do a lot of that. But tell you, but if I show up there, and you got to convince people. First thing you got to do when you make a presentation, you have to demonstrate. You have to demonstrate competency. Well, what's the easiest way to demonstrate that automatically people take that you're competent? It's your degree. Right. You may not know squat, but they're going to give you credit for it, and you do know something. But they're going to give, well, sure, yeah. Well, I have an MBA in finance. I think I can figure out the numbers here. Yeah, I have a master's in applied economics. Let me show you how it affects the county and how it will, blah blah blah. Hey man, if I can put together a 30-year, $99 billion transportation program, working this thing out for the next 30 years is nothing. It's simplistic compared to what that was. But the point is, I'd like to do that. And there's several reasons why I want to do that, because number one, I'm a product of that county, and it was a good place to grow up. I just didn't realize how good it was when it's happening to you. Does the fish really know it's in water? No, not till you take it out. And then it goes, hey, wait a minute, something right here. Right. It was always that way. Well, isn't everything this way? Hell, my family looks like the Waltons. I don't know if you're familiar with that TV show, The Waltons. No. Oh, God, you are. Anybody that's 40 years old ever sees it, they'll know what it is. Rural family, everybody gets along. We weren't quite that, but and you work hard, everybody, the Walton family, everybody's wholesome and all that. My family was like the Waltons. Well, I just thought every family was like the Waltons. And then you go to my God, that's dysfunctional. You what? It's just weird. Right. Because I got out of the water. And go, man, I went back in this pool. I can't get back in there. But wanted to do college, and it may not work. And my life expectancy is about 94. The question is, can I stay mentally capable and whatever and driven till I'm 85? And I think I can. And if not, I want to leave it set up so somebody can finish. Somebody can finish. And then they'll put a big bronze statue and all that good stuff. But I want to start an infrastructure bank. If you're back in that community, because if you're going to do all this economic development type stuff, then I know all the components that have to exist. You got to have investment capital. You got to have an educated workforce. Yeah, you got to have those two things if you're going to bring meaningful economic development to a area. Infrastructure, economics, transportation, which I also include now communications. I mean, fiber optics, communication, it's transportation. There's transporting the ideas, that's all it is to it. And, and the good governance, the social organization, the society which is represented by its government, that is in place to see to it that these things are executed. They give form to it. That's what I got planned for the next 20 years. Woohoo! I'm never going to run out of anything to do. But I want an infrastructure bank. I'll set that up. I mean, that would do more to drive the development of that company. And then you have the university, i.e., that is used. And the idea behind this university, we're talking about MIT type stuff. I mean, if you're going to do this, then go whole hog, man. They ain't going to half-ass this one. And one of the things that county has right now, which has driven this, my sister just finished up. She was the assistant superintendent of schools. And she has a life story that makes mine look like abject failure. But anyway, but she's still not my intellectual equal. I don't care what anybody says, particularly her. That county is a rural county. It's there, it can't, but it has one of the best school systems in the entire state of Kentucky. I mean, when you come out of that high school, you know something. I mean, you have basic skill levels. They have a dropout rate of like 3%.
Wow.
Well, and that killed my sister. Just to have 3% of the, hey man, we got to do something here, that type of deal. But anyway, my point is, you have all this. Well, there's no jobs. What do? They have to move off. Okay, they have to move away. Well, okay, you go to college and you go to work. Well, okay, let's do this way. If you go to this high school, you're going to this university tuition free. And we're going to figure out how to get this done. I already know how to get it done, but I don't think I can talk those people in. But that's the other thing. That's the governmental entity and the organizational entity. Government is just the working hand of the society. It says, we're going to achieve this. Well, you got to talk all these people into this. And then you got to have an organization that can execute it, plan it, execute it, get it done. Well, I'm going to move you here, to move you here. Then I have an infrastructure bank. Now I have this talent pool. Then we reach out to types of businesses, industries that you want. You don't want any more smelter plants in the area. I mean, or coal diggers. What you want is robotics, cloud stuff, anything, that type of stuff. And I have the talent pool. It's well educated. They're not in debt up to their wazoo. And you go to outside and says, okay, guys, this is what I got. What do you got? You got a processing whatever that needs to move here. And we have an infrastructure bank that will set up the facilities by which you can access those at a quote. And you just drive it. And then once you become successful, I kick you out and give somebody else a chance. I mean, you were already making enough money. Now go build your own building. Okay, and now we're going to put somebody else in there, and you just keep it rolling. And I've been working on this for quite some time now, and I've got some people back there interested in doing this. The last thing that I want to do myself, and the last thing I'm trying to get some of my friends to do, you know something now. You are well educated. You can't hope to be wise until you're at least 60 because you don't have enough personal experience. That's what wisdom is. It's experience plus intellect applied properly. Okay, well, how many fish do you want to catch in your retirement? How many rounds of golf? My sister's a big golfer. She's really quite good. How many rounds of golf you want to play? Come on, man. Let's build something. Let's really do something entertaining. Come on, let's go. And I don't want all this talent pool, this intellect, this ability to retire on me because I need those guys to get this done. My job is to convince these people they need to be as weird as I am in order to do this. Let's do this and why this is a good thing. By the way, I'll name a street after you. I've already got my nephew with the machine business. He's already in it for $1 million. He goes, I'm not giving you $1 million because he's got it. I said, yes, you are, buddy. And he goes, well, tell me why. I said, because I'm going to put your name on the engineering building. Oh, okay. I'm going to appeal to everybody's vanity and desire to be remembered. For $250,000 dedicated to the, I'll name a street after you. Yeah, you put in 1.22 million, we'll name a building after you. I'll create stuff we'll name after you. We're going to build one of the buildings, and we'll do it with these. This is pretty common. Bricks. And you build it, and you buy a brick. You pay $200-300 for a brick, and there's your, this, that, and the other. There you go. And your grandkids are going to go here for free. See, that's a big hook. This is about you taking care of your progeny. And you'll never be forgotten because they won't die. They'll be around forever. Now, granted, I'll have a 9-foot statue of me in the middle of the campus, but that's what my sister said. This is all about your ego, isn't it? I go, yeah, pretty much. But I'm going to do something good for my ego. You, on the other hand, are going to hit another 80 in a round of golf, which, by the way, is quite good, but you need to get over here. Hell, I've already got the first president of the university picked out. If I can get this done in 10 years, she'll be around. She's great. She's already done. So I said, you got a job. She goes, what's that? I said, you're going to be the first president of this university. She goes, I'm not working for you. I go, yeah, you are. You just don't have a choice yet. We'll figure this out. But you got to do that. That's what I'm going to be doing for the next, getting my kids through and just that and the other and blah, blah, blah. And just basically doing that till I fall over. One of the greatest assets that you could have, I was thinking about on the way over here, is good health. Is good health. Because in order, if you have poor health, it's kind of hard to keep all this stuff going.
Right.
But even that should not be a detriment to you, because we have the perfect example, Steve Hawking. He was confined to that wheelchair for 30 years that way, or more. One of the greatest minds the human species ever produced. And he was paralyzed for 30 years. So even that should not stop you, unless you just give out, and which he never did. But that's, good health, that's pretty, and I'm pretty, although my wife has offered a couple of times to help me die from lead poisoning. I don't know what that was all about. But anyway, any other questions?
Said, no, thank you so much, Mr. Steve.
You're quite welcome. I've enjoyed it more than you have, believe me.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.